Two films next week on Good Friday. First, we go back to the time when wizards ruled the earth and dragons ruled the skies in the animated adventure film about the flight of the dragons. That's at 1:40, and it'll be followed at 3:10 by one of the most successful of all true-life adventure films, Born Free, starring Virginia McKenna and Bill Travers. In 15 minutes, Margo MacDonald has more help on claiming your rights when you can ask Margo. First on BBC One, cartoon comedy. And now on BBC One, here's Margo MacDonald with more help on claiming your rights. Ask Margo.
Ask Margo. Hello, I'm Margo. It's always good to hear from viewers, especially if you have some information to pass on. So, I read with interest a letter I received recently from Yvonne Derbyshire. She works at the Ilkeston office of the Department of Employment, where she's a claimant advisor. Now, what's that? Well, as Yvonne told me, my work as a claimant advisor involves checking that registered unemployed are claiming the correct benefits, and I find that, as the unemployed are naturally mainly at home, there are quite a few who end up caring for a disabled friend or relative. I can then help these unemployed people with advice and help them to claim the various benefits for carers, which all sounds reasonable enough. But as a claimant advisor was something new to us, we thought that we ought to try and find out a bit more about what they do. So we contacted Todd Austin from the E-Force. That's a training course for people who want to work in radio or television. And we asked Todd to see what he could find out about claimant advisors. Todd?
Well, when you showed me the letter, I thought, great, some real help for the unemployed. But like you, I'd never heard of the claimant advisor service. So I contacted various citizens advice bureaus, independent advice centres and caring organisations. And I found that hardly any of these places had heard of them. And the ones that had didn't refer people to see claimant advisors, as they mistrusted them because they were linked to the Department of Employment, you see.
Well, if I haven't heard about them, and you haven't heard about them, and the CAB haven't heard about the Claimant Advisory Service, then how does MD actually get to see a claimant advisor?
Well, most people are referred to see a claimant advisor after they've been to a restart interview. Not everybody gets referred, only those people that the restart officer feels needs extra support and help with their benefits.
Well, now I know how the system's meant to work, but have you ever actually found anyone who's been to see a claimant advisor?
Yes. John was referred to a claimant advisor because 6 years ago he had to give up work to care for his daughter, who was handicapped, and since then he'd been on supplementary benefit. The restart officer told him that he was technically unavailable for work because he was caring for his daughter, and therefore shouldn't be on supplementary benefit. So they sent him to see a claimant advisor who told him that he should be on invalid care allowance.
Which sounds terrific. So what happened then?
Well, not a lot. He was given a form to fill in and left to that, and it took him a whole year before he got things sorted out. And as he told me, he wasn't very happy with the service that he got.
I feel that even though the Claimant Advice Service did start the procedure to get me on the invalid care allowance, they did not follow this up with any support. I had to seek independent advice and help before I received my invalid care allowance.
Well, after that terribly enthusiastic endorsement of the service from John, what did you do?
Well, I contacted the Department of Employment and asked them, is it not the job of a claimant advisor to give help, support and advice to claimants?
And they said?
Yes.
So why didn't they give help, support and advice to John?
Well, they told me that they would like people to come and see them more than once if people needed extra help and support. And they do have provision to go out and visit people in special circumstances. But as there is only one claimant advisor to every unemployment benefit office, they do run short of time.
Which seems like an admission of failure, because what they're saying there is that they just don't have the time to give help, support and advice to claimants who come to them.
Well, it does make you wonder what the service is there for, really, because when I spoke to the Department of Employment before, they told me that claimant advisors are there to give help and advice to the unemployed, to check their availability for work, and if applicable, to find them alternative benefits. But you must wonder, is this service not just set up as another device to take people off the unemployment register?
What an uncharitable reporter you are, Todd. However, If you've had any experience of the claimant advisors, then we'd like to hear from you. And we'd like to hear whether you consider you have been helped or hindered. So drop us a line and tell us about your experience of the service. And I'll give you the address to write to at the end of the programme. Now, how much do you earn a week? I suppose that most of us would say not nearly enough. But for lots of people, not enough really isn't enough. At the moment, there are about 9 million people on low wages earning less than £135 a week. And some low-paid jobs have a legal minimum wage set by a wages council. So, for instance, if you're over 21 and working in a licensed hotel, you should be getting £2 an hour. If you work in a takeaway fish and chip shop, you should get £2.19 an hour. And hairdressers are also covered by a wages council. Their minimum wage should be £1.95 an hour. Now, the low pay unit in West Yorkshire has been doing some research into low paid jobs, and they've found that some job centres are advertising jobs paying below the legal minimum wage for that particular trade. But what if you're in a job covered by a wages council and you then find that you're not getting the legal minimum wage? What can you do about it? And can you do anything without being sacked for being a troublemaker? Well, Maggie Hunt from West Yorkshire Low Pay Unit's on the phone now. Hello, Maggie.
Hello, Margo.
What would you advise people to do in this position? How do you find out if your job's covered by a wages council and you're not absolutely certain?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do, as you say, is find out whether or not you're covered. And the best thing to do is to go to a low pay unit or a law centre if you have one in your area. If you don't, the Citizens Advice Bureau will put you in touch with people who can help you. Or alternatively, the wages inspectors, who are the part of the Department of Employment that sort of police this mechanism, they actually will give you the information as to whether or not your job is covered.
But what about the advice to people who find out that they're being paid below what they should be and they have to approach their boss? What sort of advice can you give them to make sure that they don't lose the job as well?
Well, there are a couple of things, really. The wages inspectorate can get them to be paid the legal level and get back pay that they have not been paid. I think one of the most important things to remember is that you can claim this money back, which is legally yours, after you've left the job that you're in. The other thing is so that if they think that their job is covered, and if they found out that their job is covered, that they need to keep a record of their pay slips, the hours that they work, and possibly people that they work with who can back up what they say. Because the trouble is, once you've left, it's often your word against somebody else's as to whether you actually worked those hours and got paid that amount.
Maggie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, just to recap, if you think you're not being paid the legal minimum wage for your job, go and get advice, either from a CAB or, if there's one in your area, from a low pay unit. And remember, there is something you can do about it if you're being paid too little for the job you're doing. Personal allowances and tax cuts formed a major part of this year's budget. But even if you aren't earning an awful lot of money, it doesn't mean that you won't have to pay income tax, as 81-year-old Mrs. Lily Thomas has just discovered. When her husband died last year, Mrs. Thomas started receiving an annuity pension of £500 a year, and she was also informed that tax of £150 was to be deducted from the pension. Her daughter, Gillian Thomas, thought that this was a bit odd, as her mother's only other income was her pension and a small amount of building society interest. Gillian Thomas, what alerted you to the fact that perhaps this was a bit much to ask your mother to pay tax on this pension?
Well, really just the letter that they sent, which was quite difficult to understand anyway, but they pointed out in the letter that they'd something like deducted tax at Schedule D basic rate from your pension. And I thought, why? Because she obviously wasn't in the bracket when she should be paying tax anyway.
Right, so what did you do about it?
Well, with the help of my husband, who also spotted it, we wrote back to the Legal and General and said, why are you actually deducting this tax when I don't think she should be having to pay tax? And they said, oh, sorry, we'll send you a form. This form, if you send in this form, we may not have to deduct tax, which we duly did. And it did indeed prove that she didn't fall into the tax limit, and so they stopped deducting the tax, and we were able to then write to the Inland Revenue and claim back what they paid to them in error.
Now, is this normal? Do outfits like the Legal and General just do this as a matter of course, just tax pensions like
Well,
that?
we did ask them why they hadn't actually pointed out that, she may not be into the limit, and they said, well, we should really have sent you this form originally. I'm sorry, we didn't send it. And we will be sending it now automatically to all our people so that they can claim. But we really feel they should point out that you may not have to pay tax and make it much clearer, because the wording of the letters and any tax things are so complicated. Things like gross and net, and well, who can understand that? I can't understand it, so I'm sure 81-year-olds don't.
How much better off is she once she reclaims the tax?
Well, I think we got £150 back last year, or whatever it was. I mean, it's not an enormous amount, but it's quite a lot to a pensioner.
I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
Gillian, thank you very much. Now, it could be that when you retired you had to pay tax on your income, but as Gillian was saying, personal tax allowances increase each year. So it's worthwhile checking to see if you still have to pay tax. But what should you do if you think that you're paying too much tax? Well, first of all, get in touch with the tax office that's making the deductions, and the address of that tax office will be in any letters that you've had from the Inland Revenue. And even if those letters have been filed under B, that is bin, then contact your local tax office. And they're in the phone book under I for Inland Revenue. And you should then write your tax office a letter saying, I wish to have my tax deductions reassessed, as I believe I'm paying too much income tax. Could you please send me the relevant forms? Now, don't forget, tax offices automatically deduct tax, so it's up to you to claim it back. Claims can be backdated for up to 6 years, so it's worth fighting for. And that's all for this week, but I'll be back on Monday, BBC 2 at 4 o'clock, with part 2 of our special on the Social Security Act. Now, that programme will be signed and subtitled for the deaf and hard of hearing. So if you have any friends with hearing difficulties, tell them about the programme, because the Social Security Act is likely to affect them too, and I'd hate them to miss out on the information. Bye-bye for now.
And of course, Margo MacDonald is back again with Advice Shop on Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock on BBC 2, when she'll be explaining more of the DHSS changes in benefits which come into effect from the 11th of April. And on BBC 2 in just over 5 minutes, Friday Report investigates what football clubs are doing to combat the problem of hooligans.